a lot of what you see in the evolution of the platform as a whole and how data savvy creators have become. People who were on YouTube and really successful in the beginning were successful by accident. And then you have a couple of generations, later to the generation that we're in now, which is, kids 15, 19, maybe like 21 kind of age range, who at this point have grown up with YouTube, right? They were the first generation who looked at YouTube and at big YouTube stars and said, I want to be that as a career. They were the first people to identify YouTube as a career aspiration and then go after it and then figure out what it took to get there. And they did that in a really methodical way. So we run the Game Theorists, the Film Theorists, and GT Live YouTube channels. So we have 3 channels, and together they're quick math.
Together we have 27 million total social followers across all the different platforms. Yeah,
20 million coming from YouTube, and we nerd out about all sorts of things in pop culture and basically fuse entertainment with education to look at your favorite movies, TV shows, and video games through the lens of science. So like math, physics, biology, to help you learn something while doing it through the lens of something you already love.
Yeah, a recent favorite of ours, actually, that went up not too long ago, is we calculated the total number of characters who die in Disney animated movies by doing things like analyzing, okay, how many lions and hyenas and plains animals die in Lion King during Scar's 5-year reign, and calculating like, oh, it's 5 years because Simba leaves the pride when he's X tall, and then he comes back and he's a fully maned adult, which is usually around 5 years old. And how tall is Pride Rock? And how long out into the distance is the horizon? And what's that territory encompass? And how much? So that is the sort of nerdy. Yeah, it is. It is the sort of
first off, who even thinks about that stuff?
Clearly me. We are answering the questions that no one needed to know the answer to. No one cares.
To do that, we had to watch every single Disney animated movie because there are there are death counts out there that exist online, but they're not comprehensive. So we had to go back and watch every single Disney animated movie.
Oh, sure, and you're like, oh, how hard can that be? Because you're watching like Lion King and Mulan and all those classics.
You just want to die.
But then you get into like the deep cuts of like Make Mine Music and Melody Time, and you're like, ooh, these have not aged well. Oh. Disney sweeping those under the rug. Yeah. But basically the channel started about 7-8 years ago at this point, where we were both in kind of a transitional phase. Stephanie was graduating from grad school for pharmacology, and I was transitioning out of theater at the time. And it was during the economic slump, and no one really wanted to hire me, even though I had all this background knowledge. Like I was valedictorian, I had a double major in theater and neuroscience. I had directed all these shows.
Neuroscience. That's so
is that weird? Is that unusual? I mean, it is weird in retrospect to look at that and be like, what was I planning on doing with theater and neuro? Like the neuroscience was the backup plan. But no, it actually, you look at where we are today, and we're in this really fascinating area where those two things work perfectly together. Where
science.
Digital video is an ecosystem that is a creative platform, creative platforms that require content, but that are built and maintained by algorithms and by people who think in numbers and formulas, and that give you back analytics that you can then use to inform your creative decisions moving forward. And so those two really merge together really nicely.
Even what we're talking about today, right, with AI, really takes understanding how the human brain works and basically digitizing it, right? And talking about how we can get as much data as possible about how people's behavior works, whether they're, engaging online or in a movie theater or whatever kind of entertainment they're consuming, whatever they want to get out of the platforms that they're using. It's taking how well can a machine understand how the human brain works, and applying that, in our case, to entertainment. And so weirdly, like through whatever serendipity, we've ended up at this interesting crossroads where both of us have a data background, but we work on this creative platform, and those two worlds have been able to come together really well.
Mm-hmm. And you also have an agency as well, right?
We do, yes. So in addition to running kind of the production end of things, where we have our 3 main channels, we also consult brands, other YouTubers, both large and small, across everything from optimizing their content, to creatively developing their content with them, to how to make your influencer campaign run better, everything, how do you read analytics, and then not just on YouTube, but then other social platforms as well.
Yeah, our goal with that has been to go in with an all ships rise kind of mentality, where we realized that we were doing things more intentionally, it seemed like, than other people in the space, and we were really trying to pay close attention to our data and other people outside of us and our channels, whether it's other YouTube creators or brands or whatever, were either not sure how to deal with that data. They didn't want to deal with that data. They were like, no, things have been functioning fine the way they are for decades. I don't need
lot
your
of
data.
In the space.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've noticed that.
YouTubers less so now, but it used to be that they really functioned off of superstition. It was like, I have to click my heels 3 times before hitting publish, and that's the only thing that makes my video perform. It was literally like that kind of craziness. And so our thought was that, like, no, if we can talk to people about how to actually analyze their own performance, they're not going out there and saying things like YouTube is broken, because they can actually look at their own performance and say, well, this isn't working out as well as I'd like, but by reading my data and understanding it, I can figure out how to fix it, how to iterate, how to get better, and how to sort of ride the wave of, kind of where digital was going.
Yeah, and this was especially true for brands in the early days too, where we would reach out to people and be like, hey, we would be really excited to partner with you on an upcoming project. And the response we'd get back is, oh no, we've done digital video, we've dipped our toe in it. We did one video and it didn't work. It got like 0 views, 100 views, whatever. Like, there's clearly no market here. Like, there is no future here. And we're like, we disagree.
One sample with a one-off video.
Right? I mean, obviously.
They told the creator, no, you have to do it like this. You can't be yourself.
Yeah.
Can't be authentic.
Yeah.
You have to do it
Make
this
sure our
way.
creative director's on the set.
Yeah.
Because they obviously know how to create video better than you.
Isn't that how good content gets made? And isn't that how science works? Like, you have an N of 1, and you're like, oh, well, that was a fail.
was great.
Well, we didn't cure cancer this time. Too bad. I guess that's uncurable. Yeah, ship that one out. No, and so we would have enter into these conversations with brands and be like, hey, we will do a video with you for free to start off with, but do it with us, and we will prove to you the value that this space has to offer. And we would do the video, we would do the partnership, and they would come back to us.
I never got a deal like that.
Sorry.
I mean, you weren't early enough, buddy. I'm sorry. I hate to break that one to you. But it was one of those things where, but now hopefully you're seeing the ramifications of us kind of spreading the good word.
Working with you guys, we've given you guys a handful of clients.
Yeah.
That where we've come in and had integrations within your content, and it's a consistent ROI. Mm-hmm. And that's why we keep bringing business back to you, because there's a return.
Yeah.
Well, that's good.
And
We better
you guys
keep
have
it up.
very good engagement, and then you make it an opportunity where the brand can help empower the content,
Right.
rather than disturb it.
Yeah.
And it works really well.
Right, that's exactly it. And so in those early days, it was a real big focus of ours to help preach the good word about this space and help people understand it, because there is a really big learning curve here. And it's even bigger now than it's ever been. Like, every year it gets more and more difficult to enter into these digital platforms. Yes, absolutely on YouTube, but all of these digital video platforms. And so if we can help ease that learning curve and empower brands, creators, whoever, to make better content and see more success here, creativity rises, the overall ecosystem rises, and everyone benefits.
Absolutely. So you've been on YouTube almost since the beginning. I mean, you've been out there when you're unemployable.
Right, yeah, that's true.
What do we do? I'm gonna quote myself.
Excuse me, I was very employable. People just didn't see it correctly, okay?
So you started making video content, and the ecosystem of YouTube back then versus now has really transformed. It's really changed. There's ways to game it back then to get found and followers and views and so on and so forth. And now it's not as easy to do that. It's hard to be discovered if you're not doing the things that the AI wants. Like, tell us about that transition as a creator and those that you've worked with, and then really specifically when Google Brain took over YouTube and started to be the AI for YouTube.
Yeah, absolutely.
We like to talk about generations that we've seen on
absolutely.
YouTube, and I think that corresponds to a lot of what you see in the evolution of the platform as a whole, and how data savvy creators have become. Because basically, and we were talking about this a little bit before the podcast started, where People who were on YouTube and really successful in the beginning were successful by accident, and it ties into all of the superstition and everything. And then you have a couple of generations, later to the generation that we're in now, which is, kids 15, 19, maybe like 21 kind of age range, who at this point have grown up with YouTube, right? They were the first generation who looked at YouTube and at big YouTube stars and said, I want to be that as a career. They were the first people to identify YouTube as a career aspiration and then go after it and then figure out what it took to get there. And they did that in a really methodical way, a lot of them. The biggest successes that you see on YouTube, or the ones that you've seen sort of pop up out of almost nowhere over the last few years, including like the Jakes and Logan Pauls of the world, Rice Gum and Collins Key and there are a whole handful that you can just wrangle off. James Charles is a great example. They're all young. They all grew up with YouTube. They all knew exactly what they wanted to do. They didn't stumble into this by accident, and they looked at what made the people before them successful. They looked at trends they could ride. They understood the importance of keywords in your titles and tagging appropriately and calls to action and, creating communities and tropes within your channels. And so you see them sort of tick off all of these boxes of everything that they've learned from the generations of YouTubers who have come before them. And by generation, I mean like 3 years worth, but they know, and they've implemented it all from the start, which has played extremely well into sort of not gaming in a bad way, but taking advantage of what they know about audience behavior and then understanding how YouTube treats certain types of audience behavior. If the audience watches longer, then your content gets promoted. So they put the most exciting part of the video 2/3 of the way in. So they make sure that people watch all the way through. They understand the importance of calling to subscribe and ringing the bell and doing all those other things that play into the data-driven system that's underlying all of their content. Yeah. And they've been extremely smart about it. The new generation of creators are just incredibly smart.